Let's see if it works. I've been working on this so much because I wanted to do more of these with different vendors,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this has to work. Like Facebook used to have an option, but oh no, did it not work? Oh, I think we're live. Yay! Hold on, let me go to this. I might check and see if my husband can make sure that it's working, because it looks like it's working, but hold on. Okay, I think it's working. So we can go ahead and get started. I think there's a tiny bit of a lag, but that's okay. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Hi, everybody. We're going to get started here with Ryan Lundquist, and he's going to introduce himself. He is an awesome appraiser and very well known in the Sacramento area. So this is my first time on Zoom through Facebook Live, so just bear with us. So he's going to talk about insights into the market. And if you guys have any questions, we'll be looking at our Facebook comments so we can answer those. So I'll let you take it away, Ryan.
Well, sure. Okay, so just brief introduction. Ryan Lundquist. I'm an appraiser. I've been appraising since 2003. It's a great joy to do what I do. I love the numbers. I love making graphs. I'm a data nerd in some senses, but I'm totally down to earth. Okay, and so just hoping that we can have some conversation today. Happy to answer any questions, give insight, and talk about whatever you guys want. So thanks for having me today, Jenica.
Awesome. You're welcome. So tell me a little bit about kind of what you're seeing. I think the biggest question that I have for you, because I think I see all your graphs and I think you're awesome. It's just what do you see going on right now? Because I know we've seen like less listings, but then there's still properties we wrote an offer a couple weeks ago and there were like 5 offers and it went 100,000 over list price. And people are like, is this happening during, COVID? And it's like, yeah, it is. But I know every neighborhood's really specific, but can you give us your insight as to how the pandemic is affecting real estate in the greater Sacramento area currently?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that your comment underscores the reality that I think we often think that, hey, the market is going to completely stop and, it's not going to move forward. And a lot of conversation has been around that is real estate down to zero, as if it would ever get to zero. And that's just that doesn't happen unless for some reason maybe the government imposed, rules on the market or something. But we're really seeing an interesting market. I would say that as soon as the COVID dynamic started to happen on specifically March 12th, that was the day we found out about Tom Hanks. It was the day when I think everyone sort of went into freak out mode where they're like, whoa, this is actually serious. I need to pay attention to it. And, events everywhere were canceling and NBA season and, and so all that. And so I think that since then and since sheltering in place, we've clearly seen a different market. We have a suppressed market right now, but in a sense, I think a few weeks ago, what we saw happen is that listings, sort of hit their bottom and pendings. And the last, 2 weeks in a row, we've actually seen more pending contracts and more new listings hit the market. And so it's almost like this dynamic where everyone's adjusting to it, just like we're adjusting in life and just figuring out how do we do life here and how do we go to the grocery store and masks and, all that stuff. I think consumers and, real estate professionals are figuring out the same thing with the housing market. And so we're definitely seeing a market that's moving. It's, certainly way less pendings and less listings than about a month ago. But like I said, some of those things right now are beginning to increase. And about 45% of current pending since April 1st have multiple offers. And so you do see this market where I think I've been talking about in all my talks, buyers are expecting this huge discount because they read this headline about, the market is in trouble. But then they get out there and they're shopping and thinking, gosh, there's not that much on the market. I was just having a conversation with someone on Twitter last night about this, and he and his husband had been looking for a home, and he said, there's not that much out there, and that it's really true. And I think that buyers enter this market, they just have to have a realistic mindset that you're going to still have to bring a strong offer. not every, I know your example of 100,000 up. I mean, not
I know
everything's
that
doing
was,
that.
yeah,
That was probably
extreme.
underpriced or special or like that would, I'm so glad we're not in that market. That sounds like San Francisco for so many years, where properties get bid up hundreds of thousands. And I never want our market to be like that. But I do think we still have a market where, if you're priced reasonably as a seller, you're probably going to attract a few offers, one or two. If you're priced low, you're going to get a lot more offers. If you're priced too high, you're going to get zero. So
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That's such good insight. I wrote down, 45% of recent pendings had multiple offers, because I think that's a great just tool for agents when we're going into listing appointments or whatnot to give that statistic. This is kind of not on the COVID topic, but when you see, I know that some people have been curious to see when prices jump up quite a bit. How do I say this? When prices jump up quite a bit, can you explain how that is able to happen with appraisals? Like a house in a neighborhood sold for 100,000 more than what the comps are. How are appraisers able to justify that, just in general? I know it's not
yeah.
COVID, but I know that some people want to know, and I just want you to share that, I guess, with the audience.
Sure. Well, I mean, sometimes I'll say there is no justification and that a house closes high because the buyer came in with cash, or
Right.
maybe what happened in today's climate is that there was an appraisal waiver, and so the lender didn't require an appraisal. And so, or other times, maybe something funky is going on where it closed that high and there really is no support for that. But I mean, other times appraisers are gauging the market, and you might have sales that, are right here at 520,000, but if listings and pendings are up here at 540, I mean, this is probably where the market's at. And so an appraiser should take these sales and then make adjustments up to account for this right here. Because we always see the current market in the pendings, what's getting into contract. And when a market's rising, you see the pendings way up here, and it just shows that values are moving up. And when a market's declining, it's like you see pendings way down here compared to the sales. And so appraisers should be looking at sales and going, okay, I need to make negative adjustments because demand has decreased or whatever. And so, so I mean, hopefully an appraiser is juggling both, recent sales and then current listings and current pendings.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That's awesome news, or just information. Can you explain to viewers too why an appraisal waiver might happen? I know that probably 3 months ago we were seeing appraisal waivers on, and I might have the timeline wrong a little bit, but appraisal waivers on people that were putting down 20%. And then not that long ago, we had one that closed about 3 weeks ago. And I want to say the first offer that we accepted did require an appraisal. So can you tell me a little bit, or tell our viewers more about what an appraisal waiver is and when it would be, used or not used?
Sure. So, and I'd say I defer to a loan officer for the definitive answer
Okay,
because I'm
sure.
not on that side, but an appraisal waiver would basically be where the appraisal is waived, in simple terms, where it's not required because the borrower is coming to the table. And probably what happens is that the lender, maybe on file, they have a previous appraisal, or maybe they have enough data to where their AVM or their computerized valuation basically would show that, hey, value looks like it's there. But in my experience, it's typically been with borrowers who are putting 20% plus down. I haven't heard of it in other circumstances. I'm sure it's happened, but usually it's not going to happen probably in a very risky situation, or someone's getting down payment assistance and it's 100% down, because they're really looking at the situation and going, can this person afford it? And kind of a weird thing, because it's almost like an advantage for people who have more money. I've always felt like when I look at that, it's a real inequity with the way that the system's designed. And so it just I just feel like there's something wrong about that, but something understandable about that for banks, managing their risk and their portfolio. They're making business decisions, but kind of an interesting thing though, too, when you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's interesting when explaining to sellers, like, hey, this is what could happen if you get, go with the offer that has the highest down payment if you are worried about the value. If we get, 10 offers, that's oftentimes our, guidance to them, because there might be if there's an appraisal waiver, that's going to work out in the best for our sellers when we're representing them.
Yeah, and I understand that. And sometimes I'll say that the borrower they can still opt to get an appraisal, an independent appraisal. And so, so sometimes in those situations it can get a little sticky because,
Yeah.
just because there's a waiver doesn't mean that the borrower is going to accept it. I would say that most of the time everyone's going to dance and, and sing hallelujah and be really excited. But sometimes when a property is clearly in contract for too much, then a borrower might look and go, I really need to understand value here. I want to use an appraisal as a negotiation tool because I think we're too high. Or I just want to be sure about my decision. And so sometimes during an escrow, that can be, a frustrating thing, especially when the appraisal, if it does come in lower. I've been, a part of that. And, it's not a fun situation for anyone involved, but I think it's the nature of real estate that, negotiation doesn't just end when the contract's signed. It goes throughout the whole entire escrow until the ink is dry and the deal is done. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I know buyers oftentimes have asked that, like, if it is waived, what if I just want one anyway, right? What if I want an appraisal anyway, even though it's waived? And it does become a sticking point sometimes because things are going along smoothly, and that does, can like throw a wrench into the transaction if it does come in lower or whatever. For appraisals right now, with everything that's going on, are you seeing them take longer? Are your deadlines longer or extended because of that? Or are you guys backed up, I guess?
I find that most appraisers that I talk to on online forums or all the local appraisers I know, they're really busy. And so turn times are longer. Typically, what lenders do, they tend to prioritize purchases over refinances. And so, so the turn time for a refi theoretically might be a little longer, but hopefully they're putting the purchases sort of on the front burner to say, please handle these first, and we have more time with the refi. But, a lot of colleagues I talk to, their turn time's like 2 weeks, sometimes more. And so, that's tough in a market like today when everyone wants to move faster, or, I think there's incentive to get escrows done sooner, especially for sellers. They got a buyer on the hook. Is that buyer going to have a job? And, what's the economy doing? And so it's like, you want to get closed as soon as you can, but I think that there's just incentive then to, hey, get this appraisal ordered, fast, and, make sure that the appraiser's getting a reasonable fee too. Sometimes appraisals take a long time because in the background you have someone ordering an appraisal and then they've collected, $700 from the borrower, and then they're shopping for an appraiser for 300, and pocketing the rest. And so it becomes an issue of finding someone that's willing to, work for that fee.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Does anybody who's watching have any questions for Ryan while we're here with him? He's a very valuable source. Everybody wants to talk to him. We'll see if anybody chimes in. While we're waiting, is there anything else about kind of the market that we're in right now that you can share that's interesting or would be useful for either sellers or buyers or realtors, given, because I think sometimes when I see other agents posting things or stuff, I'm like, oh, and then I look at your stuff, I'm like, okay, it's interesting because you can kind of get information and kind of sway it as how we want to. And then I look at your stuff, I'm like, I need to check mine against yours because I feel like your stuff's really accurate and you're looking at the data all the time, it seems like.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And not getting too much sleep these days. Man, it's been crazy. No, it's been actually really wild. This pandemic is awful. I think from a market standpoint, it's totally fascinating. And so what I would say, one of the most important things to understand right now is that we have 3 different data sets. And so we have pre-coronavirus, we have the current pandemic, and then eventually we'll have after this is over. And so one of the things we have to do is just consider, like when we're pulling comps or when buyers are looking at homes and stuff, they've just got to consider, when did this one get into contract? Because if the market's different now compared to a month ago, then we want to be careful about that pre-coronavirus data. We're in a pandemic, the market's suppressed. We don't know what the market will be like in a few months from now. And, hopefully when all this stuff, lets up, we'll sort of resume normal and figure out what that new normal is. But I think from a data perspective, we just got to really split hairs with the numbers. And especially when all this ends and we're using older sales, we're going to be like, okay, when did this get into contract? And, it's just going to become a really valuable question for anyone who works in real estate. and even for sellers when pricing their homes. So if this is prolonged more, then, the market's poised to be, slower, and, we'll kind of see what happens. But one thing I wanted to mention though, too, from a stats perspective is that right now we have 1,200 properties that aren't on the market because they canceled or they went on hold status. And so right now, that's part of the issue with why buyers are shopping out there and not finding as much, because, there's been less new listings coming. And then you had this huge chunk of 1,200 listings that normally would have gone to the market, and, they're not here right now. And so there's still 500 plus for listings on hold. And so these sellers are just kind of waiting to see what happens before they re-engage with the market. And so, so that's why I think it feels kind of tight on the buying side, just because there's less stuff going around, and so that's exactly why I was saying before, hey, you gotta make a strong offer that's reasonable. Don't expect this, 10% discount from market value. That's not the market we have right now.
Yeah. And do you think too, with what you said about, less inventory, then doesn't that lead to prices, I guess, staying where they're at or sometimes increasing because that inventory is still so low and the demand is still there in certain neighborhoods?
Yeah, I mean, it could. In a market, when a market starts to change, you see the change first in the pendings and the listings, and eventually whatever trend is happening shows up in the prices. And right now, it's kind of too soon to see what's really going to happen with prices. I think we need a number of weeks more, and then another month or two, then we'll have a much better sense. But I mean, the reality is that, in a lot of neighborhoods, prices are very similar to what they've been, even though demand has changed. And so but I don't know. I mean, the answer is not going to be the same in every area. Like, one thing we have to consider is at the upper end of the market, there's issues with jumbo loans right now. And so if buyers begin to have struggle, with obtaining financing, then, that could affect, what people are willing to pay over time. Or it can affect some people going, hey, I don't want to list my home right now. I'm going to wait until, the kinks here are all worked out. And so, the market's not going to be the same in every neighborhood or price range. And I just think, I mean, that's true in any market, but I think it's especially true today. We just got to sort of not impose this one idea. Here's what the market's at, and then we put that over every single neighborhood. It just, I think we're going to be in for a rude awakening and go, oh, wow, it's more aggressive than I thought it was, or it's softer than I thought it was in some areas, and so it's like 55 plus community could be different than condos or, multi-units or apartments. I mean, and so there's all these different slivers. It's like going into Rick's Dessert Diner, not every piece of pie is the same, what's on my mind. So no.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's interesting because you think that that's what would happen, where it's not like a one size fits all. I mean, I think what's interesting is when we're looking at, like, even the clients we were just with, but like, hey, looking at prices and what things how quickly properties went pending before this happened. And it's like, okay, do you price based on that? Do you price based on what the solds were? As we're trying to navigate pricing, it's interesting. But I think at the end of the day, once it's live, our listings or, whatnot, the market will speak for itself too and show us, where, how is the market reacting to where we're priced at, and different things like that. Because in the one neighborhood that we're getting ready to list in, which is in Sun River, properties were going pending like less than 10 days when, in the last 3 months. And then it's like, okay, nobody's listed. I think one might have listed since the pandemic, but it's just interesting, as an agent, just trying to navigate that too, because it is all new to us,
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I think there's that reality where you sort of have to test the market. On paper, you're going, well, it looks like here's where value is. It looks like on paper. And so let's price reasonably, and then, let's not go 10% higher than everything. It's not that market, but let's price reasonably, but then let's respond to the market. And if the market bites right there, great. We nailed the price. And, if prices are a little lower, then the market will tell you. The market doesn't lie. It always speaks, but the hard thing is, I think, to listen. Not so much for agents, but I think sometimes for sellers to be like, they're holding out, no, this is what I need for my property. And you think, well, it doesn't matter what you need. The market doesn't care about that. The market only cares about paying a reasonable price. So that's the way I always look at it anyway.
Yeah, it's good. And it is true. The market will tell us, we're the messenger, but the market will tell us where we're at, if we're priced right, or, maybe we were priced low and got multiple offers. We just had I don't know if I've ever had 19 offers on a property, but that's how
Whoa.
many I had. We just closed a couple weeks ago, and it was nuts. It was
Oh my
so crazy.
gosh.
But what happened
That's
is the guy ended up offering like 50,000 over 50, but way out of the comp range, and we just knew that it probably wasn't going to appraise, and it didn't, and then he canceled, and gladly gave his deposit to my sellers, and we moved on to the next offer. But it's just been nuts. And so coming into the pandemic from that, it's interesting to navigate as an agent. We do have an answer or a question. Jenna, thanks for your question, says, when do you see the market increasing in Rancho Cordova? And I'm in Gold River, so I sell all over Rancho. And I would say that prices have been going up. So you can always message me privately, and I'd be happy to do a market analysis for you specifically, or you might be an agent. But I've seen prices still increasing, at least in the neighborhoods I've been working at in Rancho. Do you have specifics on that, Ryan? Or
Yeah. So,
overall?
okay. So for me, I always get a little anal because it's never just about prices in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about volume. What's happening with sales volume, because prices can be going up or the same. But in the background, I'm going, are we seeing about the same number of sales? And if not, then that shows us that buyers have backed off for whatever reason. Obviously right now it's during pandemic. People are staying home. They're sheltering in place. But other times, it's the market's getting unaffordable. And so I think that in my mind, I watch sales volume more than anything, but prices, there's certainly more price pressure, I would say, in places like Rancho Cordova. With lower price points north of the freeway in the Riverside portion, it definitely, more competition. The way I think about this is that, like, when you think about Sacramento County, the median price is $400,000, and that means that literally here's 400,000, then half the properties are selling above, and then half of them are selling below. And so when you look at the northern portion of Rancho Cordova, for instance, there's a lot of properties that are priced below 400 because that's where the market's at. And so that's basically means that half the market in the county is fighting under that price point. And so it naturally makes things more competitive. And so, how long can that last for? I mean, we've had 8 years of price growth in the market as a whole, and I just say that markets are always doing something. Sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down, sometimes they're sideways. And there's all these different aspects. And so, I couldn't make any promises for the future, but I'd say for now, and really for no matter what the market's doing, there's more eyes on the market in a price point like that. So, and shout out to Rancho. I lived in Rancho for 10 years. I will always love Rancho. I will never speak ill of it. So.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we specialize in Rancho. So all the 95670 and 742 zip codes. And it's so close too. When you live so close, it's so nice to go out to those properties because they're so close to your house. I think it took me 10 minutes to get home from my last appointment. But thank you. That's awesome. I know, is there anything else that anybody wants to ask as we're on here? I think that I love what you said too, because even in your blog post, you said like not always focusing on price. And I think even just as a realtor, because that's, one of our main things, it's like, that's kind of what we look at. And I need to be better about looking at the volume and the sales and kind of analyzing in a different way, because I think that's helpful, just how you put that.
Definitely. Yeah. I don't know. Price is like the thing. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what our sellers are hounding us for, or buyers
for sure.
wondering, when they're going to, how they can get a lower price. Thank you. You've been so helpful. I feel like I'm kind of just going off the cuff here because this is our first Zoom and I'm trying to get all, situated, but thank you for coming on. Do you have any other last comments or anything else you wanted to share that might be interesting with everything that's going on before we have?
Gosh, there's always interesting stuff. No, I just say, just as to close it, this is to be determined, and right now we're in the midst of it. And we're all going to be experts with this market and with life when we look back, because you have more wisdom with hindsight. And so, but in the midst of this, I just say that no matter where you're at, we're going to make it, and we're going to get through this, and let's thrive as much as possible and keep focused on serving people and loving people, because that's the most important thing right now in this world.
That's so true. What great words to leave us with. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Janica. Real honor. Appreciate it.
Okay. Take care. See ya.
Take care.
Bye.